It's interesting that we're having this conversation here because I think my first exposure to intersectionality happened here at Texas A&M, and I didn't know it was happening. So if you only looked to the literature on women faculty in engineering, it was coming from a predominantly white woman perspective. And that left out a whole lot of people. So for the first time, it's like, okay, you've got to look at race and gender. Still didn't have the term intersectionality, right? That's a relatively new term, came up in the late 80s, early 90s. But nobody was really talking about it from an intersectionality perspective. And so what we found when we started looking at women of color, and others have done this work, Ong Hutardo out in California have done this work, is that women of color face cultural taxation. So you're the lone black woman, and at University of Nebraska, I was the first African-American female faculty member hired. Everything that had black came to my desk. Everything that had minority came to my desk. So I'm trying to be a scholar. I'm not thinking about the black thing or the woman thing. I'm just trying to do my work and get tenure. But every document that came on campus ended up across my desk. That's a burden that I have to try to figure out what to do with that, okay? Then there's the double bind. We talk about the double bind, looking at gender and race, but there's another perspective to it. Mainstream society sees women of color, particularly black women, in one of two categories. You're silent and non-threatening, or you're visible and you're a threat. And so now you've got to deal with, if I speak up, am I threatening now to people? And then there's marginalization. There's isolation, being the only one. There are other challenges that we have. And so if you look at now the Hispanic culture and how Hispanic women and where they are raised, so if you're raised in Puerto Rico versus being raised in Texas versus being raised in California, there's a whole different set of cultural dynamics that one has to look at. So if you only rely on the experiences of white women to tell you about women of color, you're missing a huge opportunity. And so we have to start now talking about intersectionality.